Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather share a ring, a payday record, and 2 decades of bad blood. Their 2007 fight ended in a split decision, but the feud never stopped. Stay with me, because the sombrero, the rehab meme, and one father training his son's opponent all lead back to why Oscar still takes shots at Floyd. The story anyone points to starts on a Saturday night at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. May 5th, 2007. It was billed as The World Awaits, and for once, the billing undersold it. Oscar De La Hoya, 6th-division world champion, put his WBC super welterweight title on the line against Floyd Mayweather Jr., a 4-division champion who was still unbeaten and hungry to prove he belonged in the same sentence as the Golden Boy. The numbers alone tell you what the fight meant to boxing. Oscar De La Hoya, a Mexican-American, and Floyd Mayweather Jr. fought on May 5, 2007, at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada, with Mayweather challenging De La Hoya's super welterweight title, and at the time, it was the highest-grossing fight in history. This wasn't just a boxing match. It was a cultural event, a Cinco de Mayo spectacle, the kind of night where 2 eras of the sport collided in front of the whole world. Going in, most people had Oscar as the bigger name and arguably the bigger fighter. Going into the bout, De La Hoya had a record of 38-4 with 30 knockouts, and Mayweather had a record of 37-0 with 28 knockouts. And although De La Hoya was the more accomplished boxer at the time, he was the underdog according to the betting odds. That underdog tag alone tells you something about how much fear Mayweather had already put into people's heads by that point in his career. Mayweather didn't just show up to fight. He showed up to get under Oscar's skin. In the build-up, he leaned all the way into the villain role, needling De La Hoya at every press conference. And then on fight night, in front of a crowd that was overwhelmingly rooting against him, he walked out wearing a white sombrero and shorts colored like the Mexican flag. Prior to the fight, Pretty Boy had fully embraced the role of the villain, antagonizing De La Hoya at every turn during press conferences. And on fight night, in front of the passionate Latino and pro-De La Hoya crowd, he entered the ring, wearing a white sombrero and shorts with the green, white, and red colors of the Mexican flag. It was theater, sure, but it was also a message that Floyd was going to take Oscar's own audience and turn it into his stage. For a while, it looked like Oscar's night. The Golden Boy started the fight well, pressing forward and fought behind a solid jab. He used his size and his experience to push the pace early. And for a few rounds, the pro-Oscar crowd had something to cheer about. But Mayweather's speed and his defense caught up with the fight as it wore on. And by the later rounds, the punch stats had shifted his way. When the scorecards were finally read, it wasn't a blowout. It was a split decision. Mayweather Jr. wins via 12-round split decision. 113, 115, 116, 112, 115, 113. 2 judges saw it for Floyd. 1 judge, and Oscar himself, saw it differently. The fight itself ended with a close split decision victory for Floyd Mayweather, who landed 85 more punches than his opponent and controlled the pace of much of the fight. That stat about punches landed matters, because it's the exact stat Oscar has leaned on. For almost 20 years, every time this fight comes back up, he didn't land more punches. He didn't outwork Floyd on the cards that count in the record book, but in his own head, and in the mouths of a lot of boxing people who watched that night, he pressed the action and he made the fight. And pressing the action is supposed to count for something with judges. Right after the final bell, both fighters said their piece, and neither walked away thinking the same thing had happened. Floyd called it a clean win and said the performance proved who the best fighter of that era was. Oscar told reporters he felt he'd won, pointing to how he pressed forward, and that without his pressure there wouldn't have been a fight worth watching at all. And then there was the wrinkle nobody could ignore. The third man whose opinion mattered more than almost anyone else's. Floyd Mayweather Sr. sat ringside that night, paid for by Oscar himself, and watched his own son fight for the win. He didn't see a Floyd victory. I thought Oscar won the fight on points, threw more punches and was more aggressive. My son had good defense and caught a lot of punches, but Oscar pressed enough to win the fight, Mayweather Sr. said. Read that again. Floyd's own father, the man who trained his son from childhood, told reporters the wrong guy got his hand raised. That's not a minor detail. That's the single sentence Oscar has repeated, almost word for word, in nearly every recent interview and video where Floyd's name comes up. And to understand why that sentence from Floyd Sr. cuts so deep, you have to understand what Floyd Sr. actually was to Oscar before that night, because this wasn't some neutral ringside judge. This was the man who'd spent years in Oscar's own corner. Before Oscar ever stepped in against Floyd Jr., he had Floyd Sr. in his corner, literally. De La Hoya had been trained by the elder Mayweather starting in 2001, and there was some question whether or not he would be able and willing to train the Golden Boy to fight and ultimately beat his son. For 7 years, the man who raised Floyd Jr., who taught him the sport from the time he could walk, was in Oscar's camp, shaping his defense, sharpening his skills, getting paid by the Golden Boy's operation. That is an unbelievably strange arrangement when you actually sit with it. Floyd Mayweather Sr. spent years of his career preparing Oscar de la Hoya's body and mind for exactly the kind of fight he'd eventually need against Floyd Jr. It's almost impossible to imagine that dynamic in any other sport. A father coaching an opponent, building him up year after year, all while his own son climbed the same divisions. When the biggest fight of both men's careers was finally signed, that relationship became the storyline everyone wanted answered. Would Floyd Sr. stay loyal to the man who'd paid him for the better part of a decade? Or would blood win out? A subplot to the fight concerned whether De La Hoya would be trained by Floyd Mayweather Sr., the estranged father of Mayweather Jr., who had served as De La Hoya's trainer since 2001. It didn't take long for the answer to reveal itself. And it wasn't about family loyalty at all. It was about money. Mayweather Sr. announced his willingness to train De La Hoya after initially declining to oppose his son, but demanded a $2 million fee. In light of the enormous revenue to be generated by the fight, and De La Hoya declined to meet those demands, making a counteroffer of $500,000 guaranteed, plus an additional $500,000 contingent on winning. Negotiations collapsed, and according to reporting at the time, it collapsed over dollars, not over any sudden pang of fatherly conscience. ESPN's Dan Rafael later reported that it was over money and not family ties. So Oscar had to walk away from the corner he'd known for 7 years and find somebody new, fast, for the biggest fight of his life. Ultimately, the sides were unable to come to an agreement, and De La Hoya hired the highly respected Freddie Roach to be his cornerman instead. Roach, who'd built his name working with Manny Pacquiao, stepped into a camp that had been built around a completely different coaching philosophy, with only months to prepare Oscar for a fighter who knew every one of his habits, because his own father had spent years installing them. Think about how much of an advantage that gave Floyd Jr. His father had watched Oscar train for the better part of a decade. He knew what Oscar liked to do when he got hit, how he set up his jab, what he did when he got tired in the championship rounds. Even sitting on the outside of Oscar's camp during fight week, Floyd Sr. carried years of inside information about the man his son was about to share a ring with. And Floyd Sr. didn't disappear after the negotiations fell through either. Mayweather Sr. would then reunite with his son to attend his training camp, though he was just there in the background and did not have much involvement, as Mayweather's late uncle Roger Mayweather took on the role as sole trainer for the fight. So even without officially cornering his son, he was in the building, watching, present for the moment where his old fighter and his own blood finally settled things. That's the emotional wreckage sitting underneath every interview Oscar's given since. It's not just that he lost a boxing match, it's that he lost it to a family he'd trusted with his career after that same family walked away from him over a contract number and then watched from the room as their son took the win. Add to that the detail that keeps resurfacing in every single De La Hoya rant about this fight, that his own father said he lost against him when they fought. And you start to see why Oscar doesn't treat this like ancient history. He treats it like an open wound that a member of the Mayweather family personally reopened by picking Oscar's side in public. That wound might have scarred over eventually. If the story had ended there, boxers lose fights, even close ones, even ones where the loser thinks he got robbed. What kept this rivalry burning wasn't the fight itself. It was everything Floyd said and did in the years afterward, especially during the moments when Oscar was at his lowest. Every rivalry has a moment where it stops being about boxing and starts being personal. And for Oscar and Floyd, that moment came in September 2013, not in a ring, but on Instagram. Oscar had checked himself into a rehab facility, dealing with a relapse into substance abuse. De La Hoya, 40, checked himself into rehab last week after reportedly experiencing a relapse into substance abuse, TMZ reports. It meant he missed one of the biggest events his own company had ever promoted, the fight between Floyd and Canelo Alvarez, a fighter Oscar had personally built up through Golden Boy Promotions. De La Hoya recently checked himself into a rehab facility and will miss the fight. Floyd beat Canelo that night by majority decision, and instead of just enjoying the win, he turned his attention to the man in treatment, who couldn't even be there to see it. A meme appeared on Floyd's Instagram account. It showed Oscar looking upset, with a caption mocking him for supposedly saying he gave Canelo the wrong strategy because he was high. The meme features a photo of De La Hoya with tears in his eyes, with a caption that mocks the boxing promoter's struggles with substance abuse. Meanwhile, in rehab, it begins, "Oscar, I gave Canelo the wrong blueprint, I was high." This wasn't some anonymous troll account. This was the biggest fighter in the sport, posting a joke about addiction aimed at a man who was in a facility, trying to get his life together on the same night that man's own fighter had just lost. The backlash came fast, and within a day, Floyd was walking it back, claiming somebody else had posted it. Floyd said, "It's unfortunate that a stupid picture was posted to my Instagram account earlier today that was not posted by me or authorized by me to post," adding, "I completely support Oscar De La Hoya and his family during this difficult time in his life." Nobody really believed the account got hacked for one meme and then went quiet. But the apology did the job of cooling the story down. Oscar, for his part, took the apology at face value publicly. It was very nice of him. De La Hoya said to TMZ regarding Mayweather's admission he had done wrong, "I greatly appreciated it. So, thank you. But grace in public doesn't erase what got said, and it definitely doesn't erase the pattern, because that meme wasn't a one-off." In the days leading up to that same Canelo fight, Floyd had already been taking shots at Oscar to reporters, framing Oscar's doubts about his undefeated record as jealousy dressed up as boxing analysis. Despite Golden Boy Promotions widely advertising the fight, Mayweather lashed out at De La Hoya for suggesting his undefeated record could be tarnished, telling the LA Times, "I feel like Oscar couldn't beat the king, so he wants to see someone else beat the king," referring to their 2007 fight, in which he won by split decision. Floyd went further, framing the whole rivalry as one-sided envy from someone without his money or his shine. "Oscar's just jealous of me. He don't have money like me. He's not flyer than me," he said, "likes to run around with this golden boy image." And 2 years after the meme, when Oscar publicly said boxing would be better off with Floyd retired, Floyd didn't argue the point. He went straight for the addiction again. "I'm just saying the reason why he's probably going after me, it could be because of the drugs, because of the jealousy," Mayweather said on a radio show, tying Oscar's criticism directly back to a well-documented struggle that Oscar had already been open about publicly. That's the pattern that built the resentment Oscar carries today. It's not one insult. It's not one meme. It's a rival who, whenever Oscar spoke his mind about boxing, kept circling back to the lowest, most personal moment of Oscar's adult life and using it as the punchline. Floyd never really let that go. And Oscar never really forgot it either, even while the two of them kept doing business together behind the scenes, because that's what boxing demanded of them. Here's the part that makes this whole rivalry stranger than almost any other in sports. Oscar De La Hoya and Floyd Mayweather have needed each other for money the entire time they've been feuding. The fight itself made both of them rich beyond anything either had seen before. Mayweather versus Canelo would need to surpass approximately 2.4 million buys that Floyd and longtime rival business partner Oscar De La Hoya secured for their May 5, 2007 bout, a bout that sparked a rivalry that lasts to this day. Notice that phrase, rival business partner. That's not a contradiction to boxing insiders. That's just how the sport has always worked at the top. Mayweather and De La Hoya made a ton of money from their fight and have enjoyed an extremely lucrative business relationship ever since. But make no mistake, their relationship is often contentious, and the two will never be best friends. But boxing is a business, and these two men have done a ton of it together. That tension between money and animosity showed up again years later, when talk turned to a potential Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis fight, with Oscar and Floyd on opposite sides of the negotiating table as promoters. Even then, Oscar tried to sound diplomatic about doing business with the man he'd spent years venting about. Floyd understands that Tank wants to fight the best because Floyd fought the best, so I think it'll be easier to negotiate with Floyd, Oscar said. There was even a stretch where Oscar tried to publicly bury the hatchet altogether. It's like all that bad blood and animosity. It's like, let's just move on. I actually recently, several months ago, just said, you know what? I literally wish him all the best, he said, crediting Floyd as a pioneer in the sport. For a moment, it looked like two aging legends had decided the grudge wasn't worth the energy anymore. But that peace never really lasted, because Floyd kept finding new ways to be a source of frustration for Oscar, not through insults this time, but through the way he ran his side of the business. Golden Boy watched a wave of fighters leave Mayweather Promotions over the years, including Gervonta Davis walking away after a big win in 2022. There's been a mass exodus of talent from the stable over the last few years. Even Gervonta Davis decided to leave Mayweather Promotions after a 2022 knockout win over Rolando Romero. When Ryan Garcia became a signing target that could help Floyd rebuild his roster, Oscar's frustration with his old rival started showing again in public. Oscar De La Hoya does have somewhat of a reason to be angry at Floyd Mayweather. While Golden Boy was first forgiving of the two's friendship, De La Hoya has seemingly gotten sick of it. And while he isn't the most beloved guy these days, he has a reason to be frustrated. Then there's the exhibition circuit, which has become one of Oscar's favorite targets in recent years. Long after Floyd's official retirement, he kept fighting exhibition bouts against opponents with little real competition, collecting massive checks for what critics called glorified sparring sessions. When Floyd fought a rematch exhibition against John Gotti III, the result was ugly enough that Oscar couldn't resist commenting. Floyd Mayweather fought another exhibition against Gotti last Saturday, a real shit show that left the crowd booing in the arena at the end. De La Hoya said, in the middle of the second round, Floyd literally had the referee swapped out. What's notable about that comment isn't just the criticism, it's the tone. Oscar wasn't talking like a jealous rival trying to score points anymore. He sounded like someone genuinely annoyed on behalf of the sport he'd spent his whole life building, watching a legend milk his name for easy money in fights that meant nothing. Mayweather will go down as the best prize fighter of all time, because he keeps getting away with making millions on these horrific exhibitions. But as time goes on, his legacy may take a hit. As De La Hoya said, that criticism kept building right up through the recent talk of a Pacquiao rematch, where Floyd tried to have it both ways, signing for a real fight, and then pushing to reclassify it as a harmless exhibition once money got sorted out. That's the moment where all of Oscar's old resentment finally came together into the sharpest, most direct call-out he's given in years. All of it, the split decision, the father in the stands, the rehab meme, the years of business friction came pouring out when Floyd tried to dodge a real fight with Manny Pacquiao by relabeling it an exhibition after the contracts were already signed. The situation itself was messy enough on its own. Reports had the rematch going on both fighters' professional records, while Floyd publicly insisted it should only count as an exhibition, creating open conflict before the bout had even happened. What should be a blockbuster return has quickly turned into a confusing situation, with conflicting claims about whether the bout will count as a professional fight or remain an exhibition, and it has also been reported that Mayweather may be in breach of contract amid the disagreement. That's the opening Oscar had been waiting for. He didn't just criticize the situation, he went straight back to 2007, dragging the split decision, Floyd Sr.'s comments, and the retirement that followed it all into one message aimed directly at Floyd's ego. Mayweather, come on dude, fight a real fight. You are still trying to protect your zero? Yes, you are 50-0 on paper, but people know that you've lost. Saint, "Your own father said that you lost against me back when we fought," he said. He didn't stop at the loss. Oscar dug into what happened right after their fight, when a rematch clause was supposedly on the table and Floyd let it expire instead of running it back. What's crazy is that people don't know we had a rematch clause for 1 year. And what did you do? Your pie retires for 1 year and 1 day, he said. To Oscar, that timeline isn't a coincidence. It's proof that Floyd built his entire undefeated legacy on ducking the one man who could have taken it from him, and that the 0 everyone celebrates is really a number Floyd protected through legal timing, rather than through fighting the rematch straight up. That's the real answer sitting underneath everything Oscar has said for almost 2 decades. It was never really about a single lost decision. It's about a man who believes he beat the greatest defensive fighter of his generation, who has his own father's word backing him up, and who watched that same opponent avoid ever proving it wrong in a rematch, all while turning every personal low point Oscar hit, the rehab, the depression, into a punchline instead of ever addressing the boxing question directly. Floyd never really let that go, and Oscar never really forgot it either, even while the two of them kept doing business together behind the scenes, because that's what boxing demanded of them. Oscar even opened up about how deep that low point went, connecting it directly back to the frustration he still carries about Floyd today. Ever since I got beat up by Manny Pacquiao in my last fight, I've wanted to fight every single day, but I couldn't because I wasn't right physically, emotionally. All that depression I had in my spirit. These last 5 years I've put in the work, he said. That's a man describing years of struggle, and it's not a coincidence that in the very same breath, he's throwing his sharpest words at Floyd. The resentment and the personal pain are tangled together because Floyd was one of the people who mocked that pain in public while it was happening. Even now, Oscar frames his own comeback talk as proof that peace, not decline, made him dangerous. These last 5 years I've put in the work, said De La Hoya, and he's tied that renewed discipline directly to unfinished business with the man who's never given him the rematch he spent almost 20 years asking for. That's ultimately what keeps this rivalry alive heading into whatever Floyd does next, whether it's more exhibitions, a real fight with Pacquiao, or something else entirely. Oscar has made peace with plenty of people from his boxing past. He's called Floyd a pioneer in the same breath as calling him out. But underneath the business dealings and the occasional kind word, there's a scorecard from May 2007 that Oscar has never accepted. A father who told the world his own son lost, and a rival who spent the years since turning Oscar's lowest moments into content. Instead of ever settling the argument, the only way that actually counts, in the ring, one more time. Until that happens, or until Floyd finally stops chasing exhibition paydays long enough to answer the challenge directly, that scorecard stays open. And so does the reason Oscar still can't let Floyd Mayweather go.